What is happening in Israel at the moment is set to have a huge impact on national politics here in the UK and probably in the US. And that is part in the US. I think today there's a huge pro-Israel rally taking place. We've had very few of those in the UK. Those we have had have been small and extremely polite and well run. What we're getting now is news of frustrated Labour votes, frustrated Labour voters who are planning to desert Labour because of Labour's position about a ceasefire. This is, I think, broadly an absurd miscalculation on the part of Keir Starmer, a failure to communicate, and an obsession with sloganising. Like the river to the sea, the call for a ceasefire is out of context, and it needs to be put in context. What you've got at the moment in Israel, in the Palestine-Israel conflict, in the Hamas-Israel conflict, is an Israeli government that is largely out of control and needs to be brought back in control, and is responding to an emotional crisis which was caused by a terrorist attack on October the 7th. Now, every country has a right to self-defense. Does every country have a right to besiege another area or indeed to invade it with ground forces? And the problem is that an invasion of Gaza took place in 2014, and I think 10,000 people or 20,000 people were killed. I can't remember the exact numbers. And so that is the measure of how bad this is going to be from an Israeli point of view. What is the collateral damage that is acceptable? And the reality is no collateral damage is acceptable. So it's about talking down the two sides and walking around with placards. Well, first of all, I don't think Netanyahu nor our present government has terribly bothered what the placards say. They're not going to be influenced. They're simply going to look for ways to shut down the marches. And I think more importantly is what Western leaders are requesting of Israel and of Hamas and the Arab world. And at the moment, what we see is a lot of virtue signalling from Biden, bland requests. And it's the bland requests that are the mistake. Politics is the art of the possible. And you have to determine what is a clear goal and what is your clear route. And often these two things get confused. As, for example, in the Rwanda and the barge, the Portland barge, these things get confused. The goal, in the case of the Rwanda thing, is to stop the passage of small boats from France to the UK across the Channel. It is dangerous and it is foolish. There may be better places for people to go to, first of all, and certainly they shouldn't be risking their lives to come here without a certainty that they will be welcome and will be able to stay. Will they meet the criteria of being a refugee? The fact that we haven't provided enough clear and safe routes is a failure of the Home Office. So there's lots of problems around this. But the goal is to stop the small boats. The solution, well, there are a variety of solutions to one problem. There are a variety of solutions. And the fact that somebody rejects one solution doesn't mean they're rejecting all the solutions or the goal or failing to recognize the problem. So here in the Israel-Gaza situation, the clear goal is peace, and that's what we should be calling for on a regular basis and loudly. If people want to march, they should call for peace. There are various solutions to that, of which a ceasefire is just one, and a very difficult solution at the end of the line, really. I don't think we're anywhere near that position, number one. But number two, far more importantly, talk of a ceasefire seems to make Netanyahu even more intransigent. And his argument is that a ceasefire cannot be monitored. A Hamas ceasefire cannot be monitored because so many of the Hamas soldiers are underground. He is absolutely right. But it's not the fact that it cannot be monitored that is the problem. It's the fact that calling for a ceasefire, calling for that particular solution, builds on his intransigence, builds on his reluctance, builds on his stubbornness, rather than building on the things that he has already conceded. Politics is the art of the possible. And I think Keir Starmer has failed to explain that to his voters. And I also think, for that matter, Rishi Sunak has failed to explain it. A ceasefire is part of the process. It's a solution, and it's it's one part of that solution towards peace. There are others. Now, there are other things that we can demand which will take us towards that ceasefire. But calling for a ceasefire is calling for something specific, legal, and actually not going to be offered at the moment. So it's barking in the wind. It may make you feel good, but it's as pointless as the virtue signalling of Joe Biden, and we want to pull back from that. So instead, calling for longer pauses from the Israelis, that would be a next step. And indeed, that's what's happening in the language from the US now, in the serious language from the US, not the rubbish which Biden is spouting on television. The second thing that can be demanded, and could be demanded in marches as well, and on social media, is for Israel to recognize its humanitarian responsibility and open the gates of Gaza to let the injured through. Finding a solution for the injured is a major thing that can be demanded on humanitarian grounds. And Israel does seem to be responding. It's certainly guilt-tripped enough to say that this morning it has already offered battery-powered incubators for the children, for the babies in the neonatal ward, which is under attack or under threat of collapse in the Al-Shifa hospital. About 30 babies are in the neonatal ward, and they need to be moved. How can they be moved? They could only be moved with battery-operated incubators. Israel is offering those. Kidra says that there isn't a clear plan for the evacuation of those babies. That's a response, but Israel is offering. Do we have evidence of that? We have their word. And there's a propaganda battle between the two sides. There are apparently photographs of the IDF leaving jerry cans of petrol outside the Al-Shifa hospital yesterday. What's happened to those? Have they been purloined by the Hamas authorities, or have they been used up? It's not at all clear. And the offers of the portable incubators are another side. The Israelis insist that the Al-Shifa hospital, which Reuters and news agencies say is surrounded by tanks, is free on the east side. and that Israel is encouraging the 600 odd, I think it's 600 odd civilian casualties, in 600 odd civilian patients in the Al-Shifa hospital to leave by the east side. But so many of them are not in a position to leave. They need ambulances, they need support. I think Israel will offer that, and that's what we must insist on. And a place to go to. I think sending them to the east is absurd. They should be sent to the they should be sent directly, not only to the east, but through the gates to Israel, where they can be looked after in a proper hospital. Israel has caused this mess. Israel should clean it up. And that should be our primary message to Israel at the moment. That would then expose Hamas. If there really is a Hamas lair underneath this hospital, that would expose them. It's in Israel's interest for these civilian patients to leave that hospital, plus the 5,000 to 7,000 trapped civilians taking refuge in that hospital. 40 people have been killed in recent days. Israel says the hospital isn't under siege, and yet doctors, independently of Hamas, are saying that they cannot leave the building. Certainly the front of the building seems to be guarded and closed. Israel, to reinforce its ideas, Israel has said, has shown photographs of weapons in the Rantissi hospital, weapons that they say were found, Hamas weapons that were found in the Rantissi hospital. Hamas says the photographs were staged. President Herzog the other day showed the World News a copy of an Arabic version of Hitler's Mein Kampf with annotations. Hamas says it's a fake. Israel has rejected the ceasefire. As I say, the more we demand a ceasefire, or the more people demand a ceasefire or request a ceasefire, the more intransigent Netanyahu becomes. Well, it may just be a matter of nomenclature, but harping on about a ceasefire is not going to be successful. Longer pauses open the gates. That's a way forward. It suits the narrative at the moment of both Hamas and Israel to play up this impasse, this pause in the war. But particularly if the Hamas facilities are indeed located underneath the Al-Shifa hospital. Only time will tell. Meanwhile, the insensitivity to Palestinian suffering by Western leaders who pay lip service and virtue signal in public statements, virtue signaling like Biden, in an effort to try and steer some sort of clear political line. It's not a political line that needs to be steered now, it's a moral line. And the moral line is very clear. The moral line is to call for peace. But in the same way that a call for peace in Ukraine and Russia needs to be brokered by political action and by specific requests, a call for peace needs to be brokered by, again, specific requests. And a call for peace with a broad demand for a ceasefire, an armistice, that cannot be properly monitored, is absurd. Small steps. And the failure of the politicians in the West to articulate fully what the position is and what they are supporting and what they are not supporting is going to hit people significantly after the conflict is over. I think the Jewish community will will not forgive the lack of support. The Palestinian community and the larger Muslim community will not forgive the lack of support and the hiding behind formulae and slogans, rather than embracing the real live civilian crisis that is played out in real time in front of us all nightly on social media. Actually, not nightly, through a 24-hour cycle on social media. There are enough facts. There are too many slogans. And we need to embrace the reality that politics is the art of the possible, not the art of who says the best thing and who gets in there first. It's about making a positive difference. I've said from the very beginning that that Israel's statement to Rishi Sunak, Netanyahu's statement to Rishi Sunak, that gates would be opened to allow aid in and refugees out, should be followed up. And if that was a misunderstanding, we should use that misunderstanding. If it was a genuine commitment, then we need to see it. The fact there is only one gate open, and that into Egypt, is deplorable. There are many gates around Gaza, many of them into Israel. Israel should be opening these up, monitoring if necessary who comes out, but getting those civilians out of that area and accepting them as refugees. It is Israel's duty as an international body to accept refugees. It should start, it should show the way, it should demonstrate its commitment to humanitarian standards. And that is something that we can expect, or that is something we can demand of Israel. Open the gates. Open the gates. A ceasefire will come later. A ceasefire will simply be an unpaused pause, and you build on small things. But demanding a ceasefire at this moment is using language which is unlikely to be successful, and indeed is provocative and therefore counterproductive.